Seconds, we are live. This Hangout on Air is now live, and will be the first seconds of the YouTube video now. Hello, everyone.
Okay, hello.
System meeting.
Hello, viewers. I was in the middle of describing what we're doing with Commons Pub, and you can see in the screen share, this is one aspect of Commons Pub, which I haven't talked about yet, which is the API. So Commons Pub has two APIs. One is the REST API that is an implementation of the ActivityPub Federation server-to-server protocol, because as you might know, ActivityPub has two parts. One is the server-to-server API, which is what most ActivityPub projects implement because they have to, in order to federate and be interoperable. But the standard also describes an optional client-to-server API that almost no project uses. So in our case, instead of creating our own REST API or implementing the client-to-server REST API, we decided to use GraphQL for the client-to-server API because we thought it was much more flexible and would allow us to sort of also achieve our goal of having a sort of generic ActivityPub server. So this is still work in progress, but basically, I don't know if you've ever seen or used GraphQL, but here, this is the live API, and the API is self-documenting. So
yeah,
here,
so this is gold for me. This is gold for me because we are at Human Connection. We are also using GraphQL as the interface. And that was one of my questions, how to get GraphQL connected or integrated with ActivityPub. So it's possible, that's good to know. I'm very familiar with it, and this looks great. I think I will set up the code, Commons Pub, locally on my machine later, just to see how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, sorry, Mael, go on.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just wondering, we're not on a GraphQL implementation, but we can set up a server that does this on the side, and it would read our database directly. So we would implement endpoints going into the GraphQL representation of the data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was going to suggest. So if you already have your database and your data in activity streams format, which is great, it means that you can pretty easily implement basically a GraphQL client interface to your data. And just by speaking JSON with an activity streams format, you could then send this data to Commons Pub, and Commons Pub would handle the federation, right? And what Commons Pub does as well is validation and there isn't a good word for this. I've seen people say transformification or something like that. Basically, if your data is not quite valid activity streams, it will reformat it to make it sort of most compatible for federation.
We have that's already sort of, maybe we have to validate it. So that's great if you have a validator on your side. We also have a translator actually on our side if needed, that we can transform into any. It's something that we built before having access to GraphQL. It does something quite similar, but it's good for us if maybe we could collaborate in connecting the CodeDB onto Commons Pub, because I think that's something that could go much faster than just building the ActivityPub endpoints directly on our DB, because then it would make a use case for you guys, and it would be for us. You would be certifying that the federation is working properly.
Yeah, and so besides saving developer time, like personally, and a few of the other people involved in this project also see the goal and the potential of it being about making life easier for users. Because currently on the Fediverse, with the new projects that are popping up, like PixelFed, which is like Instagram, and there are others that are sort of replicating other sort of functionality of social networks like events and meetups, etc., and blogging and video sharing. Currently, you kind of have to find an instance of each one of those apps and create a new account on each one, and you have all these sort of separate identities, right? And separate accounts that people need to follow for getting one type of your activities. One longer-term goal with Commons Pub is that a user could just have one account on a Commons Pub server, preferably if they want running their own, and then having all their activities in one place, right? And still using different front ends for different types of activities or different types of content, you know, either for posting or browsing. Maybe having one interface for browsing that is able to show at least previews of all kinds of activities, even if they come from elsewhere. Right? Yeah. So it's transforming this more into like a modular or plugin system, rather than different silos, even if they can federate, but in terms of identity, different silos.
What I find really interesting is, and maybe there's a question behind that, is it more efficient to have the endpoints come out directly from the platform, or is it an overhead to go through Commons Pub that would itself run GraphQL and read the database? Is it
I'm not sure I understand exactly, because there are many different ways to do this, but it would be overhead for you to run one Commons Pub server to federate all of the activities from your platform. But from a user point of view, I think it's more interesting that they would run a Commons Pub server, or, you know, sign up to a trusted sort of organization or person who hosts it for them, but they would have their own instance, and then they would connect that with your app, right?
Okay, I got it.
And all their activities and the people that they follow would federate to their instance, you know, rather than everything. So it also makes it more resilient, where somebody has all their data in one place, they can easily export it all, or they can, you know, if we find a mechanism for moving instance, like I saw somebody in the chat posted about Emoji ID, this is still at the concept stage right now, but you know, we're kind of thinking about how could we have nomadic identity. So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so any platform would also use it, just like any individual could install it locally.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Excellent.
But yeah, just to say, I don't know if any of you or the people you work with know Elixir. I think you mentioned you know of it, at least, because like we definitely need help. Right now we have quite a few people involved. I'm not an Elixir developer myself, so we have mostly one person doing the development, and that person is employed by Moodle. So, you know, the focus is on the functionality that Moodle needs. But if we have other people and organizations involved,
so you're working. So are you working with Lynn and Bob and Ivan?
Yes.
Okay, I know them very well since a long time.
Yeah, and Ivan actually just joined Moodle part-time as well. So he's building the front end for MoodleNet and a different front end also for Commons Pub for the other kinds of activities.
So what exactly is MoodleNet doing?
You mean,
isn't that an education platform, MoodleNet?
Yes. So Moodle is a open source software that exists for 16 years. That is like what most teachers and schools and universities use for managing their their courses, basically, including making MOOCs. But MoodleNet is new, and it's a social media network for educators. So currently it's mostly focused on sharing and curating open content. But it will do more things in the future. But that's just one use case. It'll be part of the Fediverse. But what MoodleNet, as a team, what we're doing is trying to build that, and we're launching a private beta of that in 2 weeks. So, we've been really focused on what we need for that right now, but at the same time, trying to sort of contribute to the larger community with Commons Pub and making it generic. So like the GraphQL API I was showing you earlier, most of the endpoints that are fully implemented and work now are specific to MoodleNet, but it shouldn't be too hard to go in the code. And we want to do that, but it's about when we get around to it. If somebody else wants to go and do it, that would be great as well, to sort of make more generic endpoints to be like, get me an activity of type, toot, or create an activity of type video and this and that. But in terms of the database and the backend, we've already built in support for all of that. It's sort of just the final layer that in some cases is missing.
So would you be someone who knows the whole architecture, or a developer, or are you just someone who can talk properly about the Common Pub stack?
Well, I'm the technical architect for this project. I'm a developer as well, but not in Elixir, though I'm trying to learn it.
Okay.
So there's another developer who would be able to talk much more about like the code itself and the details of the implementation, though I've tried to stay on top of it and understand how everything is working and be involved in the decisions about how we.
Is there a reason for a choice of a language that nobody knows?
Yeah, that was very controversial, but there's many reasons. There's actually a post about that. I can find the link and share it with you. But basically, it's a really efficient language compared to JavaScript and Ruby on Rails, especially. You could run a server with not sure how many users, but definitely a handful on a Raspberry Pi. Some organizations who used to have Ruby on Rails platforms and had like 50 AWS instances to like support their load and rewrote everything in Elixir, ended up with 3 servers. It's like,
wow, excellent.
Yeah.
Super.
Just to give my 2 cents here, I'm also have a Rails background, and I know Elixir, and I always wanted to learn it. And that brings me to something that I want to tell you, Mayal. So Joseph, who has been muted here, I know him from Agile Ventures, which is an online learner community that works like you have one open source project, someone who's maintaining it, and people who want to learn programming can join in, and they have regular meetings and a group chat, and they can work together, do pair programming, and so on. And they have a lot of Rails projects, and fortunately, a lot of people who also want to learn Elixir. So that would be my suggestion. Maybe you want to check it out. Maybe Joseph can tell us a little bit about it. And Joseph, do you have an idea how many projects or how many people we have currently in the community who are interested in writing Elixir? Joseph, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we have about 6 people who are interested in like Elixir. Yeah. 6
Nice.
or yeah, I think. Yeah.
Do you know how many projects we have who already are using it?
Yeah, projects, I think 2, 3 projects, I think.
Yeah. So just as an idea, depends what you think about it, Mayel, but I like this approach, this workflow of doing learning as a work in progress and learn together with others, share the knowledge and etc. What's the group you are talking about, Mayel? Joseph, can you send us a link? Send Mayel a link to the website, and it's basically just a website which is also community maintained, and they are using Slack as the group chat. It's they're using it for years, when the Slack was still hip. So Joseph, can you send us a link, or I'll do that quickly also.
Okay,
Link for
Oops, that's it. So here's the link, and if you want to sign up for the Slack channel, then you go to, I think, just go to the login page. When you log in, for example, with GitHub or sign up page, I think they get an invitation to the Slack channel. Okay. This is how it works. Yeah. And I think Commons Pub is very interesting. So I have still a very high level understanding of it. I was a bit lost when you were talking to Tibor about the details. But I think it's something like a layer, which, for example, we at Human Connection could use. And I think we can use it especially in our current state, right? So we wouldn't, if I understand everything correctly, we're not implementing the endpoints ourselves. That's done by Commons Pub, and it's like a layer on top of our network. Is that correct, Mayel?
Yeah, that's one way you could use it. The main way, the way that we're using it for MoodleNet and for other projects we want to build, like with Bob and Lynn, for example, is kind of the other way around. It's like, first, we take Commons Pub, which comes with a database with activity streams logic and Activity Pub Federation logic and other basic things like login and users. We also have been one of the first, I think, to implement group functionality. So users. First of all, users can have multiple actors, multiple identities on Activity Pub, and then actors can be in groups, and groups can have subgroups, etc. We still haven't implemented all kind of access control and permissions in that, but that's something we want to add. And so the way we're using it is we have all of that. That's Commons Pub, and then on top of that, we just basically write some custom GraphQL endpoints. That instead of just saying create an activity with this object, we say post a comment, right? So we create sort of shortcut API endpoints that already know our data types. But you could use it without even doing that and just implement on your front end. For example, if you have a JavaScript front end, you could directly talk to the GraphQL API and talk activity streams, basically.
Yeah, that's the goal. If that's possible, that would be super awesome. Maybe you stopped screen sharing, and I think you're not connected with your laptop anymore. But actually, if you could highlight this a little bit, or give me a rough understanding how this works. So we have a GraphQL API and we have a JavaScript front. So our technology stack is the following: we have Vue.js, GraphQL as the interface between front and backend, and on the backend side we're using Node.js. We have a tiny middleware, I would say, and on the backend side we're having Neo4j. But that shouldn't be so relevant here. So the point here is we have our GraphQL API in place, and if you would share a screen maybe and show us your GraphQL endpoint and give me a rough idea how this talks to Commons Pub, that would be super interesting for me just to understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to show you. I can show you some code.
I mean, you were showing me localhost 4000 and then something. So this localhost 4000 was probably the API of Moodle.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. but yeah, what we both have now seems to be two GraphQL API servers. What you would have to do, I guess, is write some middleware that is a GraphQL client that connects to both servers and sort of makes the link between them.
I don't understand that. So we have our GraphQL client, but that's just something that runs in the browser, which connects to our server. So why does the client have to connect to two servers now?
No, the client would only connect to your server. But what I mean is, if you want to connect between your server and a Commons Pub server, then you would need to implement, probably on your side, a GraphQL client that connects to your GraphQL server and then connects to the Commons Pub GraphQL server and moves data back and forth, right?
Yes. So we have to provide the glue code.
Yeah.
I understand that. So actually, that would have been my next question. So I was expecting there must be some logic that maps the attributes and all of that from our side, from our server, which is our custom server, proprietary server, let's say, to the Commons Pub server.
Right.
And do you think this is a reasonable approach? That I mean, what I like about it is the separation of logic. We don't have to worry about ActivityPub anymore, so that's like the dream. I guess there's also, because it's heavy development on Commons Pub side, probably things are not that smooth. But anyhow, I mean, that's something I like. But is there what is if you would play the Advocatus Diaboli, what would be the disadvantage of that approach?
Disadvantage is kind of that what you're doing here is basically using GraphQL to do some kind of federation between two servers. And you could ask the question, well, if we already have a federation protocol, why not just use that? But is your GraphQL API already in activity streams format, or is it?
No.
No. So then it makes much more sense.
Okay.
Yeah, because then your glue code would basically do the translation. Or if you didn't want to do that in your glue code, you could take Commons Pub and, like we did with MoodleNet, sort of add some new endpoints in the GraphQL API that mirror the ones that you have on your end. And so then the glue code could be really simple, which is it wouldn't have to do any translation, right? It would just take something and send it over, right? And you could probably use GraphQL subscriptions to have that sort of streaming constantly rather than having to do push and pull.
I'm actually really excited about Commons Pub now, honestly. Sounds like a really good way to go, especially for us in our situation right now.
Okay.
I think it will make our other developer happy. So we have currently 2 core developers and a group of many open source contributors or volunteers. And the other core developer is not really interested into ActivityPub, and I think it would make him very happy to see that nothing related to ActivityPub will touch the server code. So we have a clear separation of logic.
Great. I see Armin in the chat is asking a question, whether the generic server Commons Pub is deploying HTTP endpoints like inbox and outbox. So the answer is yes, because that's part of the ActivityPub server-to-server protocol. So we're implementing everything from the server-to-server protocol. It's just for the client, right? Typically, like the web app, Mastodon, for example, instead of implementing the ActivityPub client-to-server REST API, they created their own REST API, and then Pleroma, instead of using the one from the standard, because they wanted to be compatible with Mastodon's front end, they implemented Mastodon front end and just added a few endpoints. And so it's just kind of weird incompatibility in federated apps. And so instead of continuing down that road, we thought, let's just use GraphQL. That way, we're not creating our own sort of REST language. We're just basically using activity streams as much as possible with raw JSON. So we're kind of hacking GraphQL. I don't know if all of you have used it before. GraphQL, usually you write very detailed schemas on both the back end and the front end. You describe all your fields and what types of data your fields can have. So it does validation. And because we wanted to support activity streams sort of extensions, right, being able to create new activities or just adding new fields in an object, for example, what we did is for every type of data in the GraphQL API, we have sort of an extra fields field, and we just give raw JSON in there.
Okay. Okay. I'm really happy that we have everything on record, because there was a lot in this meeting which I still don't quite understand, but I'm very sure that if I get familiar with Commons Pub and everything, I really understand all the questions that, for example, you and Tibor were exchanging. I'm happy for now. I think I would try to set up Commons Pub now locally on my machine, play around it, and think of a good strategy how we can marry a Commons Pub with our backend and how to write the glue code. So I'm happy. So I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that maybe Francesco, Armin, or Joseph doesn't have any, or Tibor, who just joined. I think Tibor has problems to join Hangouts. Maybe Tibor can tell us a little bit. This is the first time we are using Hangouts, by the way.
I think it's the end of the day, and my machine has got 1,000 things open, and it's just lagging, I think. But I've got the great spirit of Commons Pub. It's something I think I had already understood, but thanks, Maël, for pushing the nail in even further. And,
pleasure.
That's really cool. I think I even reached out to you quite a while back. I think I crossed your account when you were working on some South African project. I don't remember, but it was quite a while back, and it came back to me. But right now, I'd really love to go into detail because I think there's a lot of things that we can maybe accelerate. We're having 4 interns that'll be starting around the 20th of this month to set up the 4 endpoints, the endpoints to transform our activity stream into a federated endpoints. And I think maybe it would be good that we sit down to maybe see either we use Common Pub as a middle interface between the federation and the stream, the activity stream. So that would be actually, I think, maybe the simplest to go, but maybe not finished on your side, and maybe it could help our interns. It depends on the level of development you need, because these guys are not big developers. They're still quite young. I have 2 of them that aren't so, they're quite good, but not sure about the 2 other ones.
Yeah, if they have experience with Ruby on Rails, Elixir shouldn't be too difficult, especially just working on existing code rather than starting from scratch. But I do have to warn you. I don't want to oversell Commons Pub. Like, a lot of what I'm talking about are the goals for it, but it's still in development, right?
Yeah, I understand.
In terms of the MoodleNet project, we're launching a private beta in 2 weeks. Public launch probably in April, but this is unofficial. So in the short term, we put a lot of work into the federation and activity stream stuff, but we haven't fully tested everything, and it's not finished, right? We'll do much more of that as we get closer to the public launch, where we want to have federation really working.
Right.
So yeah, we definitely need help. But like longer term, the goal is that this will be usable by people who don't know or don't need to know Elixir, right? That you can just take it and just with GraphQL and your front end with JavaScript or whatever else, you can create a new app, right? And with new activities, new objects and everything. But that's still a little bit ways down the road.
Yeah, I understand.
Cool. Questions from Francesco, Armin, or Joseph, maybe? They have been quite silent.
Silent because everything is new to me, so yeah, but within time I'll understand everything. But for now, I don't have any question.
Maybe you can advertise Commons Pub at Azure Ventures. Ask Sam if this is a new project, maybe if it's worth to pitch it.
Yeah,
that would be something nice.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to mention, for those of you who want to play with it, there's a Docker Compose file in the repository. So
yeah,
that will be the easiest way to get running.
I love READMEs that have an installation with Docker Compose.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, if we don't have any more questions, this would be perfectly on time. It's 3 p.m., at least on my machine and here in Germany. What time zones are you on, actually? Miguel, Tibor, you're in the La Réunion, right? That's probably a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm CET +4, so France plus, yeah. Like
so it's France, almost evening on your side now. It's 6 o'clock.
It's 6 p.m., right? Yeah.
And Miguel?
It's 4 over here in Greece.
Oh, nice. Good. So I think so this hour is it's okay. That would be, what is in the UTC? 1 p.m. What you think? That's Francesco.
Yeah, Francesco.
Yeah.
Yeah. The chat. Aren't there events in the AS2 namespace? What is the AS2 namespace?
Activity streams too. Yes, there is a bit about events. There's a bit about many different types of activities and objects that kind of popped into the head of the writers of the standard, but so far there has been no implementations of most of these other things other than notes and articles and images. So definitely when you implement something new like that, somebody else is mentioning maps, you should look at what is already in the standard and use that, but you will probably need to extend it and add new fields and new things to actually have all the data that your app will need.
And Francesco was also, I think he was pointing on his question, not on Armin's question. Is anybody implementing maps?
Not that I have seen.
Is there any project you know that can be a starting point for this?
Just in a global way for any information or attributes that are missing in activity stream. The interesting thing is to follow maybe schema.org, or these are JSON standards of representing data. So as long activity stream is partly a standard, but schema.org is really a standard with a full implementations of many objects, and both are very related. Activity stream has that thing on top of it. It says full of verbs. It's really about activities. So that's why it's really interesting. But concerning maps or any static data, that can be just pulled out of those standards. And that's really interesting because it's all done. And then when you need some specific attributes or anything else on top of that, but when on a map you're going to start saying, okay, I took the road, or I traveled from A to B, or I'm positioned. You know, activity stream takes something that has some activity in it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a really good practice to avoid inventing anything in terms of data schemas, right? So when you need a new type of field or object that doesn't exist, to look at schema.org, and there's a few other places, depending on what sort of field you're in, that already have schemas that are defined. And so reusing those is great practice to sort of have interoperability, even interoperability with other apps or projects that don't exist yet, right? So you make it more likely that in the future, if somebody wants to implement a map, if you're using an existing standard, that they'll use the same one. And then also, I would encourage everybody to document your schemas very well and share that publicly. In many projects, you have to kind of look in the code and the database to find that. And it's a pity. And maybe we should use schema.org as a place. Actually, they use GitHub, unfortunately, but like GitHub issues for contributions. So you know, it's a community effort. You can submit new.
Yeah, but they're not very open, actually. Unfortunately, yeah.
So maybe we need another place, a wiki or something.
As I shared here a long time ago, but with Lynn and Bob, we were talking with some guys as well, Elf and some guys from Germany as well. We had a repository called Building Commons, where we would share all our data structures so that anyone could come and interoperate with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So is that still active?
Yeah, let me get it for you. We actually just recently moved out of GitHub into a GitLab. So the version that was on GitHub is abandoned. But let me get the okay.
Any more questions maybe in the meantime?
I'll put it in the chat, not in the Hangout, right? In the OAE chat. So this is the latest one. Yeah, there you go.
So and you're actually the generic server is actually using the activity streams syntax, because you reference to schema.org or other vocabularies.
Yeah, it's using activity streams, but syntax is for me the right word to describe activity streams, right? Activity streams also describes vocabulary, but it's first and foremost the syntax. And it is extensible in terms of vocabulary, right? You can create new things. You can add more vocabulary to it, right? And you can in the header of the activity stream document, you can define other namespaces, and you can point to other vocabularies and say, when I talk about something that has the prefix Git, I'm talking about this namespace that describes sort of Git-related activities, right?
Yes, so you can make aliases, for example, schema.org in the context to SO or something, and then use activities out of the schema.org vocabulary.
Yeah, you can do that, or you can also just not use a prefix and just say that the document mixes both. Mixes the activity streams document and the schema.org vocabulary and others. Right, you can put multiple ones.
Yeah,
it's also a very interesting point to look into JSON LD, Armin, for linked data, because those are standards, real standards for sharing things. And let me give you a repository here of all the documentation I've gathered about JSON-LD. So you can go through that. You'll find lots of links, and it's really the whole dimension of the future of the web. It's really the web that Tim Berners-Lee had already imagined. You know, it's like connecting everything through linked data. But if you build, it's like an RDF. It's like a JSON format, connectable like semantic web, like the RDF or Turtle languages, etc. And so with JSON-LD, if you write JSON-LD, and that's what we did with Communector, you give a chance to connecting your data together with, I don't know, might it be any ontology outside of Communector, and they can come in and consume and use the vocabulary. And
yeah, and just to add, like, activity streams is based on JSON-LD. When you're using activity streams, you are using JSON-LD, but most implementations related to ActivityPub don't implement JSON-LD in terms of the way that they implement it, right? They directly look at the JSON document and they implement sort of the syntax and the vocabulary directly, rather than having a generic JSON-LD translator, because that's pretty complex.
Okay, well, sorry, I think I just cut up again.
So is it that's so I understand now it's not a good deal to follow the instruction to follow the repository, or to develop under the repository from Darius, the Express repo. So just for Node.js, we could focus on the yes, on what we talked about.
If you have troubles to explain it in English, you can also say it in German. I will explain it.
Commons-Pub, die Commons-Pub. Also wir können über das Commons-Pub, wir sollten eher uns auf das Commons-Pub fokussieren, anstatt dass ich jetzt beispielsweise von Darius das Express weiterverfolge.
So Armin was asking if we, and I think you're referring to Human Connection, should concentrate more on Commons-Pub than to implement everything on our own. I would say I will try out Commons-Pub now, see if it's easy to set up and understand everything, and also rewatch this video, and then I will make the decision if we maybe set up Commons-Pub as part of our deployment and have an interface to the outside world, which would be amazing. And then I would say, if that's the case, if everything is as smoothly as Mayel sold it, sorry for making fun of that. No, you see the point, right? I think I'm very excited at the moment, and I cannot answer your question, Armin. If you should concentrate more on it. I mean, you're writing your bachelor thesis. It wouldn't hurt you to research all these different things because it's just so interesting, you know.
But it gets really hard.
Yeah, you get distracted. Really I see your point.
It's much information, very much information.
Yeah, I have the same problem like you. I totally understand. I can feel it with you. For me, it's also very new. It's a whole new world, and there are so many names and terms and being thrown at you, and it's hard for you to get understanding what's actually important.
I just done nothing before, and because that's really hard now. Also, GraphQL and so on.
Of course. Okay. I cannot say anything more than let's have a look into it and then see how it goes.
Yeah, just to add, I cannot answer that either, because like I said already, it's not fully finished, right, and ready. So technically, if you need something that works right now to do federation, the answer is no. But it's more of a strategic question where, for me, the answer is if you have the time and sort of developers and the will, it would be better for the commons to focus on sort of developing one really good server that everybody can use to do federation, and then that way each project can focus on their specific functionality and their specific user experience without having to worry about the federation and sort of getting that built in. So it's more like a future-focused thing than a right away now.
Okay.
That's okay for us. Okay. So I'm totally fine with that. We have the will. I think the reason the architecture makes sense. I'm okay with not implementing everything right away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's okay. For me, it's a work in progress. And it's also implementing ActivityPub is not our top and only priority. We have a social network which is funded by donations. And if we make our current user community happy, that is our top priority. And the next priority then is to make people from the outside community happy,
Of course.
So that's totally fine. That's okay.
Okay, great. Well, let's stay in touch and see how we can make it happen.
Nice. Okay. Unless we have more questions, I would say let's wrap up this meeting.
Cool. Yeah. Well done.
Okay. Well, then I'll stop the broadcast, which will also end the recording. And we have our group chat. I think all the participants here on in the same group chat to connect with each other, to spread messages. And there's another meeting today in 2 weeks from now.
See you guys.
All right.
All right. Good to meet you all.
Cool. Right. It was a pleasure.
You.
Good to meet you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good to meet you. Bye.
Bye.